Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by Bet Online. I'm Ross Geiger, joined alongside Bruce Bernstein of Pure Hoops Media and World B, Michael Freer. This is episode number 72, the Jason Kapono episode, as Kapono wore number 72 during the 2010-2011 NBA season as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. The former UCLA Bruin sharpshooter had hoped to wear number 24, which he had worn throughout his career. But when he signed as a free agent in Philly, the number 24 jersey is retired for the great Bobby Jones. So since Kapono's job was to knock down three-pointers, he did a quick calculation, taking his typical number 24 times 3, which equals 72. So nice quick story for you there on the 48 Minutes podcast. But before we get any further into the show, it's a Texas showdown in the postseason, and BetOnline is your number one source for all your baseball wagering info. With up-to-the-minute scores and matchup breakdowns, get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals for the NFL and college football at your fingertips with BetOnline's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. We have everything you need to stay up to speed on each LCS all the way through to the World Series. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Don't forget to use our promo code BLEAV, that is BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. And tonight we're going to start off with our opening tip. And World B, why don't you go first here?
Oh, thank you, Ross. As we approach the end of the preseason, we are also approaching the end of the James Harden era with the 76ers. His refusal to ever be a part of the 76ers organization again was one of the big offseason topics of discussion. And while most came down hard on the future Hall of Famer, this constant cloud of uncertainty regarding his future continues to hover over this franchise. The one that, by the way, you can make the case are responsible for this situation escalating to this point. It's been embarrassing for Harden, the 76ers, and the league. But the good news is that it's coming to an end, because there is no way the 76ers are going into this season having to deal with James Harden questions night after night, win or lose. Harden says he only wants to go to the Clippers, and the noise around the league is that the Clippers are trying to acquire enough assets, otherwise known as draft capital, to send Philadelphia's way in order to get a deal done. We can discuss whether this is the right move for the Clippers to make, or even for the 76ers to make down the road. For now, let's just be happy that sometime in the next 7 days, this embarrassing mess will be over.
Yeah, it definitely is a mess, and it should be over soon. I'm in agreement with you there, World B. I think they're going to get something done because it is a huge distraction heading into another NBA season. So look forward to when that trade does go down, and certainly expect that before opening night for the Philadelphia 76ers. Bruce?
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, World B. The Boston Celtics have hired Jeff Van Gundy as a senior basketball consultant. Now, you remember him coaching the Knicks, of course, and the Rockets, and he's been a strong and wise NBA voice on ESPN and ABC for many years. His hiring is the crowning achievement for a season of non-player changes in Boston. That's right. My former teammate at ESPN will oversee all levels of the organization and share his wisdom and player familiarity with head coach Joe Mazzulla. And speaking of Mazzulla, who I'm contractually required by World B to mention that he went to the University of West Virginia, well, he now has a strong brain trust around him. Sam Cassell, Charles Lee, and Phil Pressey, 3 highly respected assistant coaches, join his bench, and adding Van Gundy is reminiscent of a similar move by the Celtics 11 years ago. After the late Flip Saunders left the Washington Wizards, he joined the Celtics as an advisor and spent a year there before returning to Minnesota as their president and eventual head coach before dying way too young at the age of 60. It'll be interesting to see if Jeff Van Gundy also uses this gig as a stepping stone for a return to coaching in the future. And if Joe Mazzulla, alum of the University of West Virginia, should stumble, who knows? It might even be in Boston.
Wow, that could be a hot take from you there, Bruce, as far as Jeff Van Gundy being in the coaching circle again. But definitely a great hire and an exciting one for Boston fans. Certainly doesn't hurt to have someone with that much wealth of knowledge within the organization. As for my opening tip, we did have our first preseason trade happen earlier today on Tuesday, and that was the Oklahoma City Thunder electing to absorb Kevin Porter's $16.9 million contract before immediately waiving him, as Porter is currently dealing with extremely serious and concerning legal problems. In return for taking on Porter Jr.'s remaining salary obligations, the Thunder did receive 2 second-round picks, a 2027 second-round pick via Minnesota and a 2028 second-round pick via Milwaukee. So I thought it would be good to go ahead and update everybody with the OKC draft pick total here tonight. Oklahoma City now has 15 first-round picks and 22, that's right, 22 second-round picks over the next 7 seasons. Keep in mind that they already have an exciting young talent that they already employ on the court, along with these future draft assets. The Thunder should keep roaring and making more noise around the league for many years to come. And one interesting side note, too, for the deal for Houston's sake, is they did go ahead and acquire Victor Oladipo. Now, I don't know how much more Oladipo has in the tank, but he is a guy that obviously has a lot of wealth of experience for a lot of younger players, and could be another guy in Ime Udoka's arsenal. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. So with that, let's go right into things here, fellas, with our first quarter. And let's discuss Dame and Giannis, who debuted as a duo this past Sunday in the City of Angels. The Milwaukee Bucks went ahead and won this game 108-97. The biggest takeaways here, of course, is Damian Lillard and Giannis pairing up together. Giannis played 15 minutes, was an efficient 7 of 10, and had 16 points to go along with 8 rebounds and 2 blocks. As for Lillard, I got to be honest, as a Bucks supporter here, this looked more like a ramp-up game, kind of just getting in some game cardio and kind of going through the offensive sets. Didn't really see much from Dame that really stood out. 22 minutes, 3 of 10 shooting, 3 assists. He did have 4 steals, but overall, I didn't see much. I didn't have many takeaways from this. I feel like Adrian Griffin didn't really show his cards really that much, outside of the fact that we saw a lot of off-the-ball screen set between Giannis and Dame, which I think could be interesting for the regular season. But I want to ask you guys, Bruce, I'll start with you. What were your big takeaways from just seeing this dynamic duo debut?
Well, it's the preseason game, and it's their first time together out on the court. So you take pretty much everything with a grain of salt. I don't think anybody was really too concerned about the numbers. It's not like these guys have not been super consistent throughout their careers. But Giannis was raving about the space that he had to operate in with Dame drawing so much attention from LA's defense. I mean, that's going to be pretty challenging for the Bucks opponents this year. The question of, you can stop one of them on a given night, and the other one probably will, drop a 30 spot on you. And some nights you won't stop either one of them. And on almost no nights will you stop them both. So they're always going to have somebody there. They're always going to have a 30-point, threat available. Now, interestingly, they played their second game on Tuesday night as we're recording the show against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who at the end of 3 quarters, the Thunder are up by 19 on him, and Dame is having another poor night. Giannis is doing his thing like he always does, but Dame was 2 out of 11. So again, nothing to be concerned about, I don't think. But I would say in their last game, prior to when the season begins, which is a week from Tuesday, right? Tuesday night, the 24th. Yep. I would think that they're going to want to try and fine-tune things a little bit and not be satisfied with 2 for 11 and 3 for 10 shooting from Dame. What do you think, World?
Yeah, I don't expect that to continue, obviously. When you're a shooter and you're a perimeter shooter, you're going to have nights like that. And, he missed a lot of time last season. So, he's getting back in the swing of things. He's with new teammates. He's learning everything. I was particularly a big fan of Giannis's comments after the game, like you said, where he said he's, quote, never been more wide open for a game. So that bodes well. He's super excited. You can tell about the prospects there. Yeah, I think the pick and roll is going to be a huge part of this offense this season. It makes sense. You're going to have Giannis coming off screens and Dame, who I mentioned in another episode, he had a career high in drives last season. I think 16 a game. So I don't think that's going to. We only equate Damian Lillard with perimeter shooting because he's so good and he's so prolific with it. But he is great at driving the ball to the basket. He's solid at dishing it out. He's just such a great scorer. You tend to forget that. This offense is going to be really, really hard to stop. And we mentioned it before in the offseason. This was the problem last season. Offense was the problem for the Milwaukee Bucks last season. Not they were bad because their numbers, efficiency-wise and shooting-wise, were actually at the level or better than the previous season. But the league is getting more and more efficient. It's getting more and more offensive, and the Bucks' progression was just not as great as the rest of the league. So they were down in the middle of the pack. They're going to be a top 10 offense this season, if not top 5, because of the way the league is set. And you got 3 tremendous 25 point scorers a night, with this group. So if they're healthy, this is going to be a tough team to stop.
Yeah, great point there will be. And I was going to definitely mention that as well for all the concerned fans with Dame's production or lack thereof thus far through a very small sample size of 2 preseason games where he's just kind of ramping up. But fact of the matter is we haven't seen Khris Middleton yet. Bruce, you had made us aware of an interesting article on The Athletic. Curious what your thoughts were on your takeaways from that piece. And let's talk a little bit about Khris Middleton before we move on to the second quarter.
He was always Giannis's top offensive teammate. He made the All-Star game 3 times. He won a ring with him in 2021. Last season, we know he battled injuries and, missed more than half of the regular season games. And last week, but it seems, tell me if I'm wrong, Ross, it seems that he's mostly healthy heading into this season.
Yeah.
Okay. So last week he spoke to Eric Name of The Athletic, and he seemed pretty unconcerned about the fact that, they asked him, well, now that you were the number 2 guy, now that you're the number 3 guy. And he didn't seem too concerned about it. In fact, he said, Dame and Giannis are going to make the game much easier for me. That's him talking. He said, he's willingly accepting this modified role, and that gives new head coach Adrian Griffin a 3rd scoring threat, a guy who's a stone-cold bucket getter who's going to have a lot more freedom and room to operate. So I would expect Khris Middleton, maybe he won't put up 20 points a game, but, he'll probably be, in the high teens anyway, shooting a very good percentage.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And if there's any fears that Khris Middleton has, I think you should just take a look at Phoenix right now. I think Phoenix is the best example out west of a 3-star tandem with Beal, Booker, and Durant. I mean, those guys have been sharing the ball extremely well, getting open shots all throughout this preseason. I see no reason why the Bucks can't do that. Wouldn't you agree, World B?
Oh, absolutely. At the end of the day, I just mentioned this league is getting more and more offensive, for lack of a better phrase, and there's more and more offense in this league than there's ever been, and it's only going to continue the way they're setting up the rule. So Khris Middleton knows this. He's not going to be a 15-point a game night. He's going to be pushing still 20 points a night. He's going to have plenty of opportunities. And the other thing I keep going back to is that article and everybody talks about what's it feel like to be the 3rd guy now, the number 3 guy in the 3-man pecking order or whatever. And I go back to that was Chris Bosh's role with the Heat.
Yep.
And who made the biggest play for them the year they beat the Spurs? It was Chris Bosh with an offensive rebound, setting up Ray Allen in Game 6 to tie it and set it up there. In 2016, you had Kyrie, you had LeBron, and you had Kevin Love as the 3rd guy on that big 3. Who came up with the big defensive play at the end of that game and stopped Steph Curry, of all people? It was Kevin Love, the biggest. So there is plenty of opportunity, and there will be plenty of opportunity to have a tremendous impact on this team and on this in the run towards a championship. I think Middleton knows this. I think the rest of the team knows this. Giannis is going out of his way to make sure that Khris Middleton understands it, and you in that article you can tell how much he cares about him, as Bruce mentioned. Yeah, I don't think maybe the numbers will be a little off in terms of scoring, but I don't think they're going to be that far off.
No, and I don't think there's really any concerns here for Khris. I mean, he's also being paid quite a bit
Absolutely.
too. So it's not like he's up for a contract extension and worried about the numbers to kind of justify, the statistics there. I mean, he's already got his big payday there on the extension. So really no pressure there. I think Khris is going to fit perfectly into that role as the kind of third option per se. But I'm with you, World B. I mean, he's going to get plenty of opportunity.
I will say this. One more thing I will say real quick. They will need him too. It's not because they do not have the depth right now that they would probably like because they gave so many assets to make this deal. So they definitely need his scoring. They definitely need him to hit that outside shot, just like they need Lillard. Because shooting is right now. I know you have Lillard, and I'm not expecting 2 for 11 or anything like that. But shooting is a concern on this team, along with depth and defense right now. But I'm not concerned about the defense because the offense is going to be what carries them for now. But yeah, I'm interested to see how the shooting goes with this team, and that's right up Middleton's alley.
And let us not forget. I mean, Malik Beasley is now on this team, and he's definitely going to bolster their outside shooting. He's got 20 points in the game on Tuesday night, and again, he's he's a guy that can hit from downtown. So he's 6 for 11 on Tuesday from 3. So, Milwaukee's more than just these 3 guys and Brook Lopez. They got some guys.
Yep. And they're going to need Malik because, of course, they did send out Grayson Allen, who's playing extremely well for the Phoenix Suns. That was a loss of a shooter there. So Malik's going to have to be big. Khris Middleton's going to have to step up and be big as well. Moving right along here to our second quarter, the NBA's annual GM survey was recently released last week. And I wanted to quiz you guys, or I'm just kind of curious here, what was one poll question you saw from that survey that really grabbed your attention? Bruce, I'll start with you.
There was actually 2 that I kind of combined together here because, and I'll explain. The best point guard question was, who is it? Stephen Curry was voted number 1, 63%, and Luka Doncic was voted number 2 with 27%. That makes sense, right? Okay. Now, best small forward. Jason Tatum was voted number 1 with 47%, and Kevin Durant was number 2 with 20%. The number 3 small forward was Luka Doncic with 17%. So what does this say about Luka? Well, I think what it says is he's a 6'7" backcourt beast who's a top scorer, a top passer, and a rugged rebounder. He's a classic example of a Hall of Fame caliber, positionless superstar.
I would tend to agree there, and sounds like a lot of GMs like Josh Green, hoping he can get some more time with the Mavericks, because that's the only way I see Luka actually kind of considered a small forward there with that roster. But interesting points, Bruce. World B, what were your big takeaways?
The one I thought was interesting was the breakout season. The winner, the person ranked first, the highest percentage was Anthony Edwards, my guy, my all-star there with 23%. And it made sense. He, third year in the league, he's improved his shooting, his rebounding, his assists, his scoring, all this perimeter shooting. Every season's gotten better and better. So, last season about 25 a game. So who knows what's going to happen this year, especially after a season on Team USA being one of the main players. The one that was surprising in terms of how many votes they received or percentage of votes was another one of my guys, Paolo Banchero, was tied for 4th at 7%. And I was kind of found that unusual because his teammate Franz Wagner was listed ahead of him, who's a excellent player and could very well have that breakout season. I just think this is a player, Banchero, that's going to go from rookie of the year, whatever he had. We've talked about it. I think he has 30 point per game potential. I think he has an offensive game like a veteran already. He just needs to be a much better. He needs to improve his shooting, but his ability to get to the line, his ability to create is really right up there with the best of them right now. He just has to be a better shooter. If he can't improve his shooting, then he should be 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever on breakout season. But if he improves his shooting like let's be honest, there's nowhere for him to go but up. He was atrocious from the perimeter last season. So if he does improve, like a year playing on Team USA and a year working, hard in the offseason, if he does improve, I think that's a 30-point per game guy in a league where you're going to have more 30-point scorers, I think, this season than ever before.
I got to say something about that. Sorry, Ross. I'll be real quick, I promise. Were the GMs voting on last year's breakout player of the year being Anthony Edwards? Because unless I'm totally mistaken, he had his breakout year last year. He was an all-star. He was one of the most exciting guys in the entire league. Fellas, he done already broken out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think he's already broken out. I mean, obviously he can get better. He's still young and still developing kind of his confidence with his all-around game. And obviously I think the defense can improve too. There's a ton of defensive potential with the Ant-Man, with what he can do defensively, especially in the steals categories. I think he could be one of the league leaders in steals this year if he really is committed to playing on that side of the ball. But I'm with you, Bruce. I was kind of scratching my head seeing that one and being like, is it that big of a surprise if he gets that much better after what we just saw this summer with Team USA? I don't think so. As for mine, the one that really interested me was which team made the best overall moves this offseason. Now, it went like this. Number one was a tie between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics. They were tied at 23% of the vote. Second was the Portland Trailblazers at 17%, which of course has to do with the haul they got from Damian Lillard. Number three is the Los Angeles Lakers, who pretty much kept their core intact, added Christian Wood into that mix. And then where it really started to get head-scratching for me was who was tied for fifth. It was the Houston Rockets, which hands down, I totally agree that the Rockets, of course, definitely got better with Ime Udoka. I think that's an overall move that's going to be considered. And then, obviously bring in some veteran pieces to go ahead and help those younger guys. I'm not opposed to that at all. It's the Dallas Mavericks. And I know World B, that's one of your teams here, but I've watched them a little bit in preseason, and I just don't understand what they're doing with their five-man position. I mean, they have Dwight Powell, who's been there forever, it seems like now, but they're starting two rookies, Omax Prosper out of Marquette, and they also have Derek Lively out of Duke, who had a struggle early on last season at Duke and is definitely struggling here in preseason. The biggest two things with Lively that are not really making much sense to me here is it looks like he's lacking strength and feel out there. I mean, how much patience are elite guards and Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving going to have with playing with a guy that can't even set strong screens? I mean, we talk about, Bruce, you're a huge proponent of screen setting, with Steven Adams being one of your biggest guys. If this guy's getting pushed around the post, pushed out, trying to set on-ball screens up top, I mean, how effective can those guards be without a legitimate big man to set those screens for him? So I just don't understand the Mavericks being that high in this list. But, Bruce, it seemed like you didn't like the Rockets this high. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, I thought the Rockets had a very good offseason.
Okay.
I thought that they did. But, it's funny. Some of the best screen setters in basketball traditionally have been guards. John Stockton was one of the best screen setters in the history of this league for many, many years. And Stephen Curry is an outstanding screen setter, and it's one of the reasons that he works himself open for so many shots. So, if Luka and Kyrie were willing to set screens for the other guy, maybe that might mitigate some of the lack of screen setting ability with somebody like Lively. But I've seen no real evidence that that's likely to happen.
Yeah, World B, are you going to count your eggs there with Kyrie Irving setting screens for Luka? Or
I will gladly proclaim this a shocker and an all-time blunder of me supporting Kyrie when I start seeing Kyrie set screens. I will know we have entered another dimension in not just the world, but the NBA. to see Kyrie Irving, of all people, setting a screen on a consistent basis. He may set a screen where he gets lost in a crowd and hits somebody by another defender. I don't know if that counts or not, but for the sake of Kyrie, we'll say, yeah, that counts. But in terms of actually setting the screen, no. Your big guys have to do a little better, Ross, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, Luka Doncic didn't lose all that weight to set screens, did he? I mean, he had that weight. He can set better screens, but he did shed some lbs this summer and looks to be in great shape heading into this year. So where I was really going with this too is where are the Phoenix Suns on this? I mean, I get if you hated the DeAndre Ayton trade return, but I don't see how the Phoenix Suns don't crack the top 5, adding Brad Beal, and then after adding Beal to that contract situation and getting the amazing off the bench guys and Eric Gordon, Watanabe, Drew Eubanks, Metu, and then coming back in that Ayton trade is Grayson Allen, a guy on the last show we discussed, seems to be fitting in quite well in Phoenix. So I think Phoenix did a heck of a job this summer, and just kind of surprised to see a team like the Dallas Mavericks who really didn't improve that much. I mean, they have their stars in place, so that's obviously going to be a lot of fun, but that was the head scratcher for me. And with that, we've gone ahead and reached our halftime buzzer. So we're going to take a quick break and come back with you for the second half. And we're back with the start of the third quarter, and we are going to stay out west, and we're going to discuss LeBron, who's about to enter season number 21, and what can we expect from King James and the Lakers this season? Bruce, I'll start with you.
Okay. Bear with me here. There's going to be a few numbers here, but I'll try and make them meaningful and make some sense. The remarkable LeBron James, as you mentioned, will soon begin his 21st NBA season. His performance in his 20th season in the league is far and away the best of any player ever. In seasons 19 and 20 combined, he averaged 29.6 points per game. That is more than 2 points more than his career average in years 19 and 20 of his career. Let that sink in a little bit while I now tell you how some of the other greats who played 20 years saw their production in years 19 and 20. Of the players who played 20 seasons, only Kobe Bryant averaged more than 19 points combined in seasons 19 and 20. That's more than 10 points fewer than what LeBron averaged and more than 5 below Kobe's career average. Even the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar averaged only half his career average, 12.4 points in seasons 19 and 20. He was over 24 for his career. LeBron's Lakers are one of the teams expected to be championship contenders. And while he's received some excellent offseason help, which I'm sure you guys are going to talk about in a moment, he is still the man in LA, despite deferring to Anthony Davis in many cases, including on media day, where Anthony Davis went first. LeBron normally would have, but LeBron said, AD, it's all you. You're the face of this franchise now. Well, I'm not sure I believe that, but it's a nice humble brag there. Last year, Darvin Ham reduced LeBron's minutes slightly, but he still averaged more than 35 minutes a game, okay, in his 20th season. Hello? He may play even fewer minutes this season, and since he's missed a bunch of games the last 3 seasons, that management of his minutes is going to be really important for LA's postseason aspirations, guys.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The one thing I think we can count on is LeBron James will reach 65 games because he's definitely going to want to stay in contention for some postseason awards. But World B, what are your big takeaways with the Los Angeles Lakers, what you've seen in preseason thus far, and your outlook on their upcoming year?
Well, I mentioned over the summer, we talked about some of these teams, and I mentioned I think they're a 50-win team. And I think they're an absolute contender out west. This is LeBron James's last good chance to win a championship, and I think he knows that. There's no team I don't think that needs the health of their stars more than the Lakers between Anthony Davis and LeBron James. It's also probably the franchise that's on the thinnest of ice when it comes to the health of their superstars. The Clippers maybe could be a contender there as well as far as health status. But, yeah, I mean, LeBron is a freak of nature that we've really never, wherever place you want to put him on the all-time list and all that stuff, there's no disputing he is a freak of nature in terms of what he can do at age 38. He's going to be 39 this year. Last season, here's the list of players that averaged at least 25 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and shot 50% from the field. Here's the list. LeBron James, and that's it. There is nobody else. This is LeBron James, almost 29 a game. He's the only one to put up those numbers in his 20th season. And so it's an absolute ridiculous thing to watch him on a regular day. He led the league in fast break points. He's pushing 40, and he's getting up and down, scoring, averaging over 6 fast break points a game. So if he stays healthy, and these are all ifs, you look at the team around him now. We've talked about it. They have quality players all around them, and Hachimura and Austin Reeves, who's coming off a season with Team USA, with D'Angelo Russell, who shot 40% from 3 after he came back to the Lakers. They have quality players all over the place now.
Gabe Vincent,
to complement. Absolutely, another great pickup in the offseason, Gabe Vincent. So I mean, I really think that this team is complete, and as complete as they've been in a while. Let's put it that way. And I really think if everybody's healthy, they're contenders with the Nuggets or whatever. This is the team that made the Western Finals. I know they got swept, and the Nuggets deserve all the credit for that. But they got there. The Suns did not. The Warriors did not. The Lakers did, and I think they can be even better.
I totally agree, and I've watched a few of their preseason games, and I have a couple of big takeaways here. Number one, D'Angelo Russell's play. He has been huge in the preseason for this team. He looks to really be committed to having a successful season, something that, in years past, people have questioned, how much he's into it, how committed he is to playing the right way or being disciplined. He's showing that discipline on both ends this year. Really like what I'm seeing from him. He can really be that third wheel offensive player if Reeves isn't that guy on a nightly basis. Taurean Prince, a guy that they signed just as a free agent, he's been playing outstanding basketball so far during the preseason. Could give him a lift off that bench, especially defensively, knocking down open threes. And I really do like Jackson Hayes that came over from the New Orleans Pelicans. He's got some good length. He moves well without the ball around the paint area to get to open positions for easy dump-offs. He's going to be a luxury. And then they got Christian Wood, who obviously has bounced around quite a bit, but is a very talented player. So I'm in full agreement. And they've had all this, great looks in preseason, and we haven't even seen Gabe Vincent once yet. We haven't seen Vincent once. We haven't seen Vanderbilt once. So all signs are pointing up in LA.
I'll say this too. I mentioned how the Bucks, their perimeter shooting is something that they definitely need. There may be no team that's a contender that needs perimeter shooting more than the Los Angeles Lakers. They really need some guys to step up and be shooters this season, because as great as LeBron is, as great as AD is, we're talking about a guy, LeBron, that shot 32% from 3. We're talking about AD that shot just over 25% from 3. And thank goodness he stopped shooting 3. So I think he only took about 74 total for the season, which you've heard me complain at no end about how he just can't shoot from the perimeter anymore. He's got to be inside. So at least he's doing that part. But these are two of their two best players who really aren't perimeter threats. So they definitely need these guys that we talked about, Vincent and Hachimura and Austin Reeves and others, to actually, D'Angelo Russell, like I said, shot well after he came to LA. They need these guys to hit from the perimeter. If they do, it really, really makes this team tough.
And I think we should give some credit to Darvin Ham. I thought he had an excellent rookie year coaching that team last year. He's only going to be better moving forward.
And real quickly here, Bruce, I'd love to get your thoughts on D'Angelo Russell's post-game comments, talking about being committed to the defensive end and really, kind of looking up to Derrick White with the Boston Celtics. What were just your thoughts seeing D'Lo, of all players, make that kind of comparison and someone he's looking at?
All I could think of was, D'Lo knows. I mean, that's game recognizing game right there. I mean, that's exactly what that is. And if D'Lo decides that he wants to start digging in a little bit more on defense, that just makes the Lakers even more formidable than they already are.
Totally agree. Now, with our fourth quarter here, I thought we'd have some fun with a Rookie of the Year debate. In my eyes, I see it being a three-man race with three candidates being Victor Wenbanyama of the San Antonio Spurs, Scoot Henderson of the Portland Trail Blazers, and Chet Holmgren of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the way I see it, Wemby, he's going to have some monster games. He's obviously going to get a lot of exposure with some TV time. And, of course, there's going to be tons of crazy highlights that we see throughout the season, just with some of the dunks. We saw a fun one just the other night over Thomas Bryant, where Bryant kind of looked at the bench like, oh, I mean, what just happened? He had no idea what just hit him. But my big question with Wemby is, will he play 65 games? Now with Scoot's going to get plentiful minutes and opportunity under Chauncey Billups in Portland, but there's going to be a lot of poor shooting nights and a lot of bad turnover games that are concerns of mine, having watched 3 of his preseason games thus far, as I'm the first one to admit I'm a huge Scoot fan. And lastly, Chet, I think we can safely say Oklahoma City will have the best record by a landslide in comparison to the other 2 teams that these rookies play on. And Chet's got a polished game that fits a huge need for this exciting Thunder team, something they were certainly missing last season. So he's going to look like the missing link and also put up some big numbers. So World B, I'll start with you. I mean, who is your favorite for Rookie of the Year this season?
Based on what I've seen so far, and we all know it's been a small sample and it is still the preseason. Mm-hmm. Wemby, to me, looked what I saw against the Miami Heat last week had my jaw on the floor. Because I'm looking at a guy, like you said, if he stays healthy with his size, that is a concern. If he stays healthy, he is a game changer in this league. He's not just a good player. He's somebody who can change the game with his length. I don't know if we've seen anybody with his length, his athleticism, and his size in one package in the NBA. Not all the things combined. We've had tall guys, we've had guys with great length or whatever, their wingspan, and we've had obviously guys that tall and that size, skinny or whatever, that have been in the league. But you take all 3 of those combined, and the things he can do with the ball, the things they've tried to work on, the pick and rolls and cutting to the basket, and just being able to throw the darn thing up in the air. I don't even know if you have to look, and he's going to get it and put it down. It's a really impressive thing. I think he's if he plays the way what I saw, I don't know if he get Rookie of the Year, but he probably would be the best rookie. And I'll say one more thing real quick. I'm a Scoot Henderson fan as well. I think I got to watch him in the preseason. This is really the first time. And to me, he looks like a 10-year vet with the handling of the ball, the way he runs the offense. He's got to shoot better, but I think he will. And he's got to have turnover nights or whatever, but most rookies have that. But he looks like a guy who's been in this league 5-6 years already. And so I expect big things from both those 2 players.
After Damian Lillard was traded to the Bucks, the Scoot Henderson Rookie of the Year bandwagon went into overdrive. Understandably so. We all felt that since the rookie was going to have the keys to the offense, he'd have the best opportunity to put up big numbers, and that gave him a leg up in the chase for the award. Or so we thought. In his 3 preseason games against NBA teams, he's averaged 15.7 points a game. Pretty good numbers, okay? Chet Holmgren of OKC, the aforementioned, has played in 2 preseason games against NBA teams. The reason I'm saying against NBA teams is because some of their preseason games were against, New Zealand club team and, the Israeli team that I'm going to talk about in my closing comment. But anyway, so I'm not just giving you their numbers against NBA teams here, okay? Chet averaged 18.5, including 21 when he went head-to-head against the Spurs and Victor. Better numbers than Scoot's 15.7. Speaking of Victor, he's played 2 games against NBA teams and averaged 21.5, okay? The best of the 3 rookies expected to compete for the award. Now, context time. of the three teams, as you mentioned, Ross, OKC will be the best. So I'd expect Holmgren to play in more meaningful games, but his numbers will likely be worse than the other two guys because he's got a bunch of ballers on his team, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and others, okay? So he's going to play in more meaningful games, but he's not going to have the numbers. The Spurs are going to be improved, but I think Victor's minutes are going to be managed by Greg Popovich. I don't think he's going to burn this guy out as a rookie. So I expect that he's not going to average 20 during the season. He'll average somewhere in the teens, I would imagine. And I don't know, probably a bunch of rebounds and certainly block shots. So that leaves Scoot. I expect the Blazers to be better than many are predicting, but probably not a playoff team. Scoot's going to get his minutes. He'll have the ball in his hands, as I said at the beginning of this sermon. And as we said at the start, he should have lots of scoring chances. So after all that, I am picking Scoot to win the Rookie of the Year award.
I'll say this too real quick. I want to mention something. We haven't mentioned them, and who knows if we will, how many times we will during the season. I've gotten to see Brandon Miller play with the Hornets, and all the stuff that they talk about with athleticism being off the charts and all this stuff is accurate. Let's just put it that way. And I really think he and Melo, LaMelo Ball, could really be a really young, dynamic duo for this league. Hopefully, for me being a Hornets fan, it happens this season. But down the road, I really think they have a chance to be a good centerpiece. Now that LaMelo signed his extension, I think they have a really good chance to be the keys to turning that franchise around.
Yeah, no, definitely got to keep a lookout on Brandon Miller as well. I know he's had some highlights throughout preseason. So it's going to be a fun year tracking these young rookies throughout the season. And I'm sure we'll keep all our listeners up to date on the progress each are making. I'm sure we're going to have some notes throughout the year on what we're seeing on those guys. So should be a lot of fun. All right, it's time for our final thoughts. And Bruce, I'll go ahead and start with you.
Thanks, Ross. If you follow the real world outside of the NBA or the sports world, it's hard to avoid knowing that right now the Middle East is on fire. The country of Israel's in the middle of things. The terrorist attack they suffered on October 7th has grabbed the attention of the world in what many have called a mini Holocaust. After taking such a vicious blow, the nation's psyche has been bruised but not broken. But in the midst of all the death, the mourning, and the fighting, there's a pro team from Israel playing NBA teams around the United States. On Monday, Ra'Anana Maccabi finished up a 3-game exhibition tour against the Nets, the Cavaliers, and the Timberwolves. And it doesn't really matter that the games weren't close, although Monday night they hung in pretty good against Minnesota. But Israel is a basketball-mad country, and the presence of one of their teams competing against the NBA, especially at a time of national danger, is a sign of hope and a morale boost for a country that shares our love of the sport and needs all the positive energy it can muster right now.
Well said there, Bruce, and definitely our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone in Israel and everyone being affected by this terrible time in the Middle East. World B.
Thank you, Ross. Earlier in the podcast, we discussed some of the topics that came out from the annual GM survey. One of the items we didn't discuss was the topic of best coach. While it was not a surprise to see Eric Spoelstra receive the highest percentage of votes from GMs, 73%, I want to focus on the coach who finished number 2 in this category, Clippers coach Tyrann Lue. Lue, who received 10% of the votes from GMs, continues to be one of the most unappreciated coaches in the league. He has an NBA championship winning coach who has made 2 other trips to the NBA Finals and has had a winning record in every season he's been allowed to coach, at least half the season. I mention that because he was fired in 2018, 2019 after just 6 games, which only happened to be the Cavs' first season after LeBron left for LA. He's had a major impact on the Clippers ever since he became their head coach, taking them to the West Finals in his first season in 2021. Just last season, he got 44 wins out of a Clipper team that had their 2 stars on the court, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, for all of 38 games. While LA lost to the Suns in the first round of the playoffs, Lue was without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George for each of the final 3 games, with George not playing any of the games because of his injury. In 3 seasons in LA, the Clippers have a combined record of 30 games over 500, despite having Leonard and George on the court together for just 81 of 236 games. That's 34%. It was good to see GMs recognize greatness when they see it, because that is exactly where Lue belongs in coaching circles as one of the greats.
I totally agree with you there, and glad to see him get some recognition, and he will be one of the highly sought-out coaches if he does not come to an extension with the Clippers here soon. I think he has a year or 2 left on his current deal, so should be interesting to track that, along with kind of what happens with the stars there. Not only just James Harden, and if does a trade get done there, but what happens with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard moving forward. The Clippers have a lot of decisions to make, and the good news is they're in a good position of controlling a lot of those players and kind of controlling their own destiny with whether or not they end up firing off on a James Harden trade. As for my final thought, there was a recent article that came out on Denver Nuggets general manager Calvin Booth, who had some interesting thoughts on Bruce Brown's offseason departure and whether it'd be a huge loss to the team with Payton Watson likely taking over some of the newfound minutes on the floor. So I quote Booth here: Some of these teams were trying to get Bruce, trying to make it worth it. It's like, just be careful what you wish for. Peyton's bigger. He's longer. He's more athletic. He guards better. He passes better. He doesn't have the experience, and he is not as good offensively yet. But we need defense, and more than the offense, But we need defense more than we need offense on this team. So the line in Booth's strong statement that really stood out to me is, quote, he doesn't have the experience. That in itself is a cause for concern, if you ask me. Are we sure he guards better, as you say? Can he really pass better? Last I checked, a lot of those areas can only improve and be confirmed with experience during regular season minutes, which in fairness, Peyton will be receiving this year, as Calvin Booth stated. By no means do I think the Nuggets should have paid Bruce Brown what he earned on the open market signing with the Indiana Pacers, but relying on young players that lack experience, I will say to Calvin, on the flip side, the same saying that he stated could also be true. Be careful what you wish for. And we're really going to find that out with the Denver Nuggets this season. They let Jeff Green go. They let Bruce Brown go. He's now talking up highly about Payton Watson, who's really unproven. Christian Brown, can he handle the bigger role? These are things that we're going to find out, and obviously just make this season that much more exciting and intriguing for the Denver Nuggets. So with that, that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everybody.